Ciao, everyone, and welcome back to Experience Italy with Friends. Today, we're taking you to one of our absolute favorite places in Tuscany, Siena, a city steeped in medieval history and tradition. We have been visiting Siena for over 25 years now, and somehow it never loses its magic. But there's one event that makes Siena truly come alive, the Palio. It's wild, passionate, and deeply rooted in tradition. In this episode, we'll share why this city is so close to our hearts and explore the soul of Siena through its legendary horse race. Let's get started. Andiamo! Experience Italy with Friends is a travel and lifestyle podcast where we will explore our favorite destinations and hidden gems, share key travel tips and cultural insights, and provide real-time updates about our move to this remarkable country. Join me, Tanya Razzo, an Italian travel expert and founder of Amici Vacations, and my Italian husband and producer, Davide Razzo, on a journey that is sure to inspire you and prepare you to create immersive and authentic experiences of your own in the beautiful country of Italy. Hello again, Amici. We're so glad you're here. I'm your host, Tanya, and I'm here with my husband, co-host, and producer, Davide.
Ciao, amici.
So, Davide, our last episode on Sardinia was a doozy, wasn't it? I mean, I'm still a little tired after the actual adventure of packing in 3 weeks of experiences into 10 days, but also from telling you all about it.
Yeah, I know it was a lot of information, but I guess people took that as an inspiration to go to Sardinia.
I sure do hope so, but we'll try to keep this episode a little lighter and a lot shorter. It's only one city to cover after all.
Yeah, let's try.
So today we're heading to one of our all-time favorite towns in Tuscany, the beautiful, unforgettable city of Siena, located right in the heart of the region, about an hour south of Florence. We've been visiting Siena for over 25 years now, and it holds a very special place in our hearts. There's something about it. The narrow medieval streets, the terracotta rooftops, the way the light hits the Piazza del Campo, all of this keeps drawing us back time and time again. It's full of history, tradition, and character, but it's also just magical. And while we haven't had the chance to experience it yet ourselves, Siena is also home to one of the most exciting and beloved traditions in all of Italy, the Palio. There are 2 events each year, one in July and one in August, which made this a perfect time to talk about it. In this episode, we'll dive into what makes Siena so special to us and introduce you to the fascinating world of the Palio. Sound good, Davide?
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about Siena. I have so many memories. And, but before we do that, what's next, right? We're going to update our audience on our lives here in Montepulciano. Do you want to start?
Sure. I think what's surprising is that we've actually slept in Montepulciano for a couple of weeks straight now and have enjoyed getting into more of a routine. I think that's been the most difficult part about moving to a new country for me is that everything is new and a bit topsy-turvy. So, it's been good for at least my mental health to establish some structure. And, we put some things on the calendar. Once a week, we go into town and have breakfast. And then we have a panino day where we reward ourselves after a long walk at our favorite sandwich shop. Thursday's market day.
Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, always buying the freshest vegetables and produce and fruit and
fish.
It's
been
awesome.
Great.
It's awesome.
Yes. And then we make a point to visit either a new restaurant, winery, or agriturismo once a week. And then on the weekends, we take a day trip somewhere.
Exactly.
So it's really helped me a lot. I mean, just having some routine. And so maybe that's advice for those moving here and trying to get established is just set up that routine, see the same people, do the same thing, have some structure.
No, it's very nice. And one of those weekends that you just mentioned, we went to the beach.
We did.
Yeah, we went to the beach of Baratti, which is about, 2 hours west from Montepulciano. And it's kind of, north of Piombino. And so, I made some reservations at the Lido of Baratti. I rented the 2 chairs and an ombrellone. So we had a place to, to suntan and stuff like that. And it was relaxing. The water was great, but not as great as Sardinia.
It wasn't, but you know what I enjoyed the most? And I was so proud of myself for packing our water floaties. And I laugh because in Minnesota, as I'm thinking about like these, water toys, so to speak, and thought, our lake days are behind us. I shouldn't pack these. And then I'm like, but I'm doing it. And I'm so happy I did because these particular floaties are easy to inflate. There's one at the head and one at the feet and easy to deflate and they don't take up space in your suitcase. So I was like, yes, we're bringing these. And nothing beats enjoying the sun while floating in the cool water. And I could tell everybody was jealous of us.
Yeah. And, we had a fabulous day and they had a restaurant there. So we had lunch. It was just perfect.
It was a nice escape from the heat, for sure.
Yeah. So what else, Tanya? What else did we do?
Well, then last weekend, we met up with some new friends in Umbria. So, John and Michael listened to our podcast, and I'm so happy they reached out to us. Hey, guys.
Hello.
They are from California, and they moved to the town of Castiglione del Lago, which is about 30 minutes east of Montepulciano, so not too far from here.
Nope.
It's a medieval town that's on the shores of Lago di Trasimeno. And, we first visited the town and the surrounding area in the spring of 2023, and we seriously contemplated moving there, but we just couldn't shake our love affair with Tuscany at the time.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
But it was a fun excuse to go there again and see it with fresh eyes. And God, we had a fun day. We boated over to Passignano sul Trasimeno, another cute lakeside town. And the best part was that we had lunch at a sushi restaurant.
Oh, it was so sushi, finally. Really good sushi here in Italy.
And it was all you can eat. And when you hear of all you can eat restaurants, you're just like, oh, geez, that's code for it's going to be average sushi.
Yes, gas station sushi.
But it was so good, actually surprisingly so. And better than many of, all you can eat in the US. So I was thrilled. And, John and Michael, we of course want to come back and visit you guys, but I think the sushi will have us making the trek quite frequently.
Yes. Yes.
So that was super fun. And, in the midst of all of this, we continue to house hunt. I mean, you're scouring all the different websites. And, now thanks to our recent trip to Umbria, maybe we have to expand our search zone.
Yeah, for certainly we do, because I've been hours and hours and hours on the internet, on all the sites to kind of, skim through listings. And it's just so much work to find the property that we want. I don't know. I at one point I told you maybe our property doesn't exist, so we need to start to make some compromises. But I'm hopeful. And that's why, we started to do this early on.
Yeah, we did. But I have to agree. It's a little bit frustrating and I've been a little bit down about it. We just can't seem to get all the stars to align. It's either the perfect location, but the wrong footprint, or the right footprint in the wrong location. So I don't know. I guess we have to be patient and just continue. And I'm going to leave you to scouring those websites and hopefully we can at least view one a week.
Patience. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, our motto. Okay, we have one more update. And this is a favorite of yours. Davide convinced me it was time to buy a Vespa. I wasn't sure about this, but I said, okay, fine. It's been on our list of wants and dreams. So I'm like, okay, we're settled. Let's get the Vespa. And it's on order. It's cute. We had to pick a color and we decided on the orange/red one. It's an orangey red and it reminds me of my favorite flower, the poppies. Me and my poppies, I know. But that is going to be its name, Poppy. Our car is named Lorenzo. So I think we need a girl in the family and it reminds me of Poppy. So Poppy is born.
Yeah, finally a girl in our roster of vehicles. After Lorenzo comes Poppy.
Yes, I'm excited. And I do have to say, because I've said this before, is that I discourage clients from renting Vespas here. But I'm giving us permission to have one since we live here and we have free healthcare.
Yes. And you will have time to learn how to drive that Vespa. So
I think there will be some moments with me in a parking lot until I'm quite comfortable.
yeah. So to purchase this Vespa, we went to Siena. And that's the perfect transition to our discussion today. Where do you want to start, Tanya?
Well, I think we should start with our personal history with this city because, as we've mentioned, we love it. And we've been going so many years. And there are places you visit once and enjoy. And then there are places you return to again and again because they speak to something deeper. And, for us, Siena is one of those places. We've been going there for all these years, and every visit brings back the same feeling, that mix of awe, warmth, and really simply stated, magic.
Yeah. So when was your first time you went to Siena?
My first time was 1997. It was part of my backpacking trip across Europe. And, I'm not even quite sure how I learned about the city. I think while I was in Florence, somebody suggested that I should go because it was just south of Florence. And, I arrived there at the train station. And I think I may have mentioned this in a previous episode, but again, it sticks out so much in my mind of, and, I think part of the memory of a location is so much impacted by who you were with. And when I got there at the train station, I was lucky enough to meet these two girls from Norway, and we immediately clicked. We decided to get an apartment together, and we walked around the city. And I think our first stop was the Piazza del Campo. And I remember just sitting there mesmerized. Like, I don't know what it is about the place, and we'll talk about it a little bit more here, but it's so serene, and you just sit with a smile on your face. And it's almost like this feeling of being buzzed. you're high on the location and you're just like, I can't believe I am here in this beautiful place, meeting these great, cool people. And, we had an amazing couple of days there. We climbed the Torre del Mangia, which we'll talk about here in a second. And during this trip, which also holds special meaning for me, is that we discovered a restaurant in an Etruscan cave. And it continues to be our favorite restaurant. And just in December, your parents were visiting and we took them to it. And I was actually really afraid because I was afraid they wouldn't like it and it would just kind of tarnish.
They loved it.
My love for this restaurant. And then they loved it and further validated that it was should be our favorite restaurant. And now it even holds even more great feelings for me. And I don't know, that was my first visit, and it just continued to get great since then. And how about you? What was your first visit?
Well, it actually also coincidentally, it was 1997 in August that I went to Siena.
I think it means something that we were both there the same year.
Yeah. So I was there. So it was part of a trip that I did with two of my best friends, which we took our bikes to Florence by train and then toured the whole Tuscany. And our first stop, we arrived in Florence, and our first leg was to go to Siena. So we got there in Siena. I remember it was at night, around 8 o'clock. We checked in our B&B, and then we went right away to La Piazza del Campo. And so we were looking for a restaurant to eat somewhere, which we did. I remember that. It was a restaurant hidden behind the Piazza del Campo. And then we went back to the Piazza del Campo. And that's when I sat down, laid down, and fell asleep. I was so tired, and that was my first memory of Siena. But I was in awe. It was beautiful. Never seen something. I didn't know Siena, to be that. So,
well, we both loved it. So I think that means something that we both went the same year, fell in love with it. And so then after, we met in 1998, we went back, and I think also in 99. But, now we've been so many times together. And of all of those memories, though, I have to say, one of the most memorable was when our son, Luca, was 23 months old, and we brought him. And, he loved chasing after the pigeons and was running all over the piazza. And so I have like this memory seared into my brain. And so I don't know, every time I sit around that piazza, I look out and I picture him on his little legs running after these pigeons. And so anyway, it's just one of many great memories. And we've brought a lot of friends there. And I love seeing their faces light up when they first see it and react to it. And now just most recently, we've gotten to spend more time there. And so in 2023, we spent 2 weeks there as a home base when we were doing some, researching and looking for places to live. And now just in January, I was there for about 3 weeks when you went to the U.S. because I wanted a fun city to be in. And, I really love the opportunity to have time to get to know the city better. And I walked up and down every single alley and looked to discover new restaurants and shops. So I have a lot of new favorites. And, I would have no problem living there at all.
We talked about this in a different episode, I believe. And, it's kind of expensive to live in Siena.
It is. And it's kind of a bigger city compared to like the smaller ones that feel a little bit charming to us. But who knows, right? Who knows where we'll end up? But at a minimum, I'm happy it's only about an hour away from us right now. So we'll be getting to go there quite frequently.
Yeah, like, going to buy a Vespa.
So Davide, we talked about our history now and shared with everybody why we fell in love with the city and our connection to it. But let's transition now to talk about the city's medieval roots because it's so important to this city as it provides, some insight into its soul.
Yeah, Siena, even though it started in ancient times, it actually blossomed in the Middle Ages. To be precise, from 12th century to 16th century. And it functioned as a republic, the Republic of Siena, with its own government, army, and a booming economy. And it was a true rival to Florence. So politically, militarily, and culturally, I guess,
Okay.
So the city really thrived between the 13th and 14th centuries. It became one of the richest cities in Europe. So thanks to banking, which they invented the banking system in Siena. I don't know if you knew that. Trade, and even its location along the Via Francigena, which was a major pilgrimage route.
Yep, I knew that.
Yeah. During that time, which Siena peaked, it gave like a rise into an incredible art and architecture, such as the Duomo, the cathedral of Siena, which they started building in the 1200s. And, with everything that goes up has to come down. So, so they had some setbacks, right? The Black Death visited them in 1348, and it hit them really hard. A huge portion of the population died. Then the city's power started to fade, while Florence's power started to continued to grow. And then in 1555, after a long siege, Siena fell to the Spanish army, which then they gave it to Florence, Duke of Florence. So because the Spanish army had a lot of debt to the Medicis, and so they conquered Siena and gave them to them. So,
okay, did not know that.
Yeah. So even though Siena was absorbed by the Medici-led Grand Duke, they might have conquered the walls of Siena, but really Siena kept their traditions and the true spirit, which is the Palio. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit and move instead now to some of the Siena's key attractions. So what is there to do, Tanya? What is there to see?
Okay, well, thanks, Davide, for that transition. There is a lot to see and do in Siena, but I'm going to first start with the city itself because it is very uniquely positioned and preserved. So, first, Siena is a walled city. Its earliest walls were built in the 11th century for defense purposes, and then it was expanded in the 13th and 14th centuries, and they are still largely standing. Like, that is kind of unique to have so much of the wall still standing. It's about 4.3 miles, and there are 3 main gates into the city. And they're impressive to walk up and still see so much when in many other cities they've been demolished. You know, the cities expanded and they had to take them down, but they've really preserved the city of Siena. And so that in of itself is an attraction. And then I want to point out the architecture of Siena, which is a little bit different than some of the other Tuscan towns in that it's largely Gothic. And, you know, I was looking at this and learned that the Sienese people wanted to show their independence and their identity, you know, especially in contrast to Florence, their frequent rival, and, you know, wanted their own architectural style. And so they actually looked to the French and took a lot of the style from them as French Gothics, you know, such as the Notre Dame, but they wanted their own distinct local flavor to it. So it was more decorative, more color, and often more emotional or spiritual in tone. And so, you know, you see this as you're walking around, and it's very unique and distinct, where it just adds, I think, to the mystique and the magic of Siena, that it's got this browns and terracotta tones and this unique architecture that just makes it beautiful and stands out. And the other thing you notice as you're walking through are these different neighborhoods. And we'll talk about them more with the Palio, but they're called contrada. Each neighborhood or district is a contrada. And you will see on the corners of most buildings a contrada symbol, whether it's an animal or other type of symbol, but each has their own story and mythology that goes with it. And you'll see these with flags and small signs and lamps. So one of the things I like doing is as I'm walking around the city is to look for these symbols and see if I can find as many as possible. And so, you know, overall, Siena is one of those cities that you can just stroll through and enjoy. But of course, it does have some natural tourist sites that you need to make sure to see too.
Okay. Have you seen many the Medici kind of symbols like on buildings at all? I don't think I have seen many of them.
There are some, but you know, on the Medici Fortress that we'll talk about here in a second.
Maybe.
Here and there. Maybe I just haven't been picking up on them as much.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, let's go to one of the first attractions that we've been talking about already, which is the Piazza del Campo.
Where I fell asleep, right?
Where you fell asleep. But despite the fact that it put Davide to sleep, it's actually one of the main social squares in the heart of the city. And, you know, it's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is so unique in its design. And, you know, it's in the shape of a shell or a fan, depending on, you know, which you want to look to. And it was designed in the 13th century. And, you know, I thought it was terracotta, but learned that it's actually paved with bricks. And it's laid in a beautiful herringbone pattern. And the color is very much like a terracotta. So no wonder I thought it was such.
Brick red.
Yeah, but then also it's divided with these white stone lines. And it's divided into 9 sections. And they represent Siena's medieval rulers, the Council of 9. So I have something new to look for the next time we are back. And as we've mentioned, and we'll talk more, this is where the Palio happens. It's kind of weird when you're there because in regular day life, it's lined with bars and restaurants and gelaterias and shops. And it's hard to imagine them covering it with dirt and having a horse race right in the middle of town. But, you know, this is where everybody gathers to socialize. There's a huge water fountain that everybody will be like, hey, meet you at the water fountain. It's sort of like the town meeting point. And we've spent a lot of time in this piazza, relaxing, chasing a toddler, eating, drinking.
Yes.
It's beautiful. And especially at sunset, I have to say, it really lights up. And continuing to stay in the piazza at the base of it, where the fan comes to a point, is the Palazzo Pubblico, the city's historic Gothic town. And I mean, you'll see this on every calendar that has a picture of Siena is the noteworthy tower. And next to it is this, you know, palazzo. It was built in the 1200s, has very elegant windows. It houses a lot of masterpieces of Sienese art. But again, I think its more distinct feature is that it's next to the Torre del Mangia, which is a tower that is 102 meters tall, making it the 3rd tallest in all of Italy.
Wow.
And that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Little Siena has a tall tower. And, the thought of climbing it may seem daunting, but the view that it offers at the top is nothing short of spectacular. I mean, it's a 360-degree view. It's worthy of the 400 plus steps. And you get like a really cool perspective of not just the countryside, but like looking down.
Yeah, looking down the campo, I was impressed. Like, oh, holy cow. Yeah, that's a nice, overview of that whole campo there.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, that view from the top is just really makes you see that shell shape. And looking at everyone looks tiny.
Yes.
But we've climbed it a couple of times and survived. And
it's a nice workout.
It is. It's a great way to burn off all that good food.
Yeah.
So continuing just up the hill from the Campo is the Duomo. Mm-hmm. And it's one of Italy's most stunning examples of Italian Gothic architecture. And it's the black and white marble stripes, pointed arches, detailed sculptures, and it's a really ornate facade. And as you mentioned, the work began in the 1200s and continued for, hundreds of years, I think, until to be finished. But, the inside is just as jaw-dropping. And I may say this about many churches, but I really think this is true, that this is now my favorite church in all of Italy.
Even better than the Vatican?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah, it has more kind of magic to it. And I have to say, it's the facade and it's the art that's inside. But what's really distinct and incredible about the church is its marble floors. And while it maybe technically is called mosaic, I don't think of it as mosaic because it literally looks like there's paintings in the tile, like large paintings that you would see on a wall, except they're on the floor. And you don't see like the little stones. So it just seems more like someone painted marble and it like seeped in. So it's very unique. And, for much of the year, a third of the floor is covered by carpet. So another special event each year is that for 2 periods, late June through July, and then again from mid-August to October, they roll back the carpets.
Wow.
And this is around, the times of the Palio. So it lines up nicely to visit for the Palio as well as to see the unveiling of these marble floors. But you still get to see a great deal of them. One thing I really hold as a good memory is attending Mass there in January. And it was just something unique to be a part of, something local, and experience the church, not just wander through and admire it, but be there for its purpose. The other thing I enjoy doing is next to the church, I don't know if you've paid attention to this, Davide, is
I did.
They started to add on to it. And as you mentioned, during the plague, they had to quit.
Yeah.
But there's portions of the new edition of the church that are now called the Facciatone. And you can go in through the Museum dell'Opera, which is right next to the Duomo, and then climb to the top of that. And then you can go through and actually climb to the top of this addition and have another amazing view of the city and the countryside. So I did this while you were in the U.S., and I really enjoyed the experience, so I highly recommend it.
I have to disclose that I haven't been inside the Duomo. So that is intriguing to learn more about the mosaic, and I kind of want to see it now. So next time we go, and maybe we'll do a trip to the Duomo. So next time,
I'll hold you to it, Davide.
When we go to pick up the Vespa, we'll go to the Duomo.
Okay, let's do that. But there's more than one church in Siena, right, Davide? I mean, there's never just one church in any Tuscan or Italian town.
Of course. I mean, there's a lot of churches. Each contrada has its own. So, but there's the Basilica of San Domenico, which is a must, especially if you want to learn more about St. Caterina of Siena. St. Caterina was the city's patron saint, so this church is dedicated to her. So what's also making this church special is that her tomb is there, and also the location of the church. It overlooks the city and has beautiful views, especially on the backside. So then there's the Basilica of San Francesco, which is a large Gothic church with beautiful frescoes inside and a peaceful cloister. So
You know, what I like about these two churches is that they are far more simplistic in style than the Duomo. Nothing flashy, very conservative. But what they have is their magnificent size. And I've taken lots of pictures of them over the years because they are such landmarks, I think, to the Siena skyline and the city itself. So very impressive churches to go visit.
Yeah.
So the last attraction to highlight before we talk about the Palio, and it sometimes gets overlooked because it's a little bit outside of the center, more on the outskirts of town, is the Medici Fortress. And it's a massive brick structure that was built in the 1500s after Florence took control of the city. And if you look at it from above, it's actually shaped like a four-pointed star. And you pick up on this as you're walking through it because you're going in a zigzag. You're like up to a point and turning down. And, you know, it was a very unique design to help defend off against cannon fire. But, you know, in today's day and age, I mean, it's used as a park and it's a peaceful place to take a walk, enjoy great views of the city, like especially at sunset. I loved it. And they have a lot of local events there and wine festivals. And this was my place to get my daily exercise and go on a walk.
Yeah.
And you just had to do it in a little zigzag of a pattern.
You invited me at least once to go with you. So when I came back from the US, so it was a nice surprise. I think that was the first time I went to that fortress.
Yeah.
We've been so many times there, and
because we're always at the center.
Yeah,
and so this was a little bit outside.
So.
But it really has a great Western view.
Yeah.
And a great profile of the city.
Oh.
Okay, now, drum roll. We're going to talk about what Siena is known for. I mean, it's really part of its identity. And, you know, Siena isn't just beautiful. It's a city that we've talked about is fiercely proud and passionate of its heritage. And that all gets embedded into this event called the Palio. It's a horse race, you know, in simplistic terms, but it happens in the Piazza del Campo, July 2nd and August 16th of this year. But again, it's not just a horse race. It's a centuries-old celebration of neighborhood pride, competition, and pageantry, and it takes over the entire city. And, you know, as we've said, we haven't personally attended the Palio. Like, the timing never worked out, and now we just learned the expense part really didn't work out for us. But a tour guide of mine recommended that we watch a documentary by Cosima Spender, appropriately called Palio. And we watched it actually the week of the Palio. And it was really good. And I feel like now I've actually been a part of it in some way. So if others want to kind of live vicariously through a documentary and learn about the Palio, I highly recommend it. But what surprised me about this is that there was more to the horse race than I could ever have imagined. I mean, there were official rules, and then there were like the behind the scenes strategy and hidden rules. So we're going to do our best to explain it so you can fully appreciate the intricacies and the strategy behind the Palio. So Davide, why don't you kick us off with the basics? Like, what are the rules?
Okay. As already mentioned before, Siena has 17 neighborhoods, also called contradas, and each contrada has its own animal mascot, like dragon, eagle, or a giraffe. And they also have their own flag. So, at the Palio, at the horse race, only 10 contradas can race. So, 7 that did not race the year before, or the race before, plus another 3 that have been selected by lottery. So that's how the 10 are made out.
Okay.
Cool. Then each contrada hires its own jockey, but the horse, it's picked randomly a couple days before the race. So they randomly pull the name out of the hat. So then the jockey rides the horse bareback, no saddle allowed. So just like in the old days.
Okay.
Then the race itself is 3 times around the Piazza del Campo. And the winner is the horse. I repeat it. The horse, not the rider. If the horse arrives without the rider and the horse arrives first, the horse wins the race.
So even a horse without a rider can win the race.
Yes. And I learned that. Actually, I saw it now that we had the Palio here a week ago or so. And of course, on TikTok, a lot of reels came up about past Palios. And one of them was when the horse won, just the horse. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So then what does the winning contrada get?
You might think like $1 million or €1 million. No, what they win is actually a flag called the Palio, which has a pretty painting on fabric.
Okay. So it sounds like it's more bragging rights that they get as the winning contrada.
Yes. And now, now we're going to the unofficial rules. I don't want to know how many side bets are being held, during the Palio. So
I can imagine. But I think that's a good segue into, you covered the basic rules.
Mm-hmm.
That's the easy part. That's the official rules. But we learned there is a ton of strategy and trickery behind the scenes. And, some of the examples I jotted down is before the race, some contrade might make secret deals with each other of, you don't block us, we won't block you, and, other traded favors. There are, of course, bribes, either to slow down a rival or even to not try too hard to win. And what's funny is it's not even viewed as cheating. It's part of the game. Like, they give each jockey a budget.
Yeah, they give them a budget
to make this happen. And they have to be smart and savvy, not just good horse riders. Also, during the race, there's a lot of locking and bumping. And so jockeys can block each other, push or, bump into other horses. And, helping another contrada win is another strategy so that if you don't think you can win with the horse you were given, your strategy is to try to keep your rival from winning.
Yes.
So really, it was a lot of the jockey has to be strategic. The contrada has to be strategic. There's different leaders. There's a director overall. And I think everybody in the town gets involved in this in one way or another.
Some of the rules, we learned on the documentary, some of the rules got banned after, I think, just recently, like with the whipping your adversary jockey. Now they cannot do that anymore, but they can still whip the horse of your adversary. So it's kind of like, I don't know, a lot of dirty stuff happens and yeah.
So, but I thought that was very interesting to learn, and I thought they did a good job of explaining this in the documentary. But the other thing that's interesting about this Palio, it's not just the day of the race. There are a lot of events leading up to race day, and, you mentioned 3 days before the race is the picking of the horses.
Mm-hmm.
It's the La Tratta, and all the best horses are brought to this square. They do a test run to show how fast they are, and then the 10 contrada gets selected, 7 from the prior year, and then the 3 new ones.
Yeah, so, we learned on this documentary that the 10 horses are basically all in the same stable, and they're owned by the same guy. And this guy has won like 13 Palios in his career, and I think now he finally retired. But so now you can imagine how much bribery goes on, and even these 10 horses need to be ridden daily, and so all the other jockeys are going to his stable, and so there's rivalry, but there's also a lot of backdoor dealing going on there right away.
Can you imagine? Well, let me just kind of continue with the events. Within 24 hours of the horse selection, each contrada has to pick their jockey if they haven't already. And so, again, they want somebody who's tough, smart, and maybe a little sneaky. Then the day of the race, there are 6 trial races before the big one. They happen in the morning, in the evening, and the square is full of excitement. Like, even just watching the practice races, I think would be a lot of fun. But the other big event is the night before the race, when each contrada has a huge dinner outside on the streets, and they have lights and flags and speeches, and they're singing songs, and everything that you can imagine is like a big neighborhood festival. And I think that would be fun to attend, just to see that. And then you have the day of the race, there is a horse blessing where each contrada brings their horse to its church, and the priest says a blessing to
inside the church, right?
Inside the church. The horse
Inside
goes
the church,
inside.
guys.
So I think that is, really interesting. And then they have a big parade that takes place before the race where they're wearing their, costumes, and people are dressing like knights and drummers and flag throwers from medieval times. And, we saw something like this when we were in Pistoia, and they had their medieval day. And I think each town in Tuscany has something similar, but it is such a spectacle to see these costumes and the flags and the city coming out, and you feel like you're like transported back to the 1500s.
Yeah.
So then finally there is the Palio race, and all of this culminates in 90 seconds.
Yeah. Hey, Tanya, I don't know if you paid attention or not, but how the race starts? They have two ropes, the one in the front and one in the back. And then there's the one horse that is outside of those two ropes. And between those two ropes, all the horses are lined up according to the drawing that they had maybe the day before. And once this last horse enters that zone in between those two ropes, then the front ropes falls and the race starts.
Well, I did notice the start. It is a little bit complicated, as with all things Palio. But in 90 seconds, it's over. And I think it just really emphasizes that it's not just about the race itself. It's the whole magical week of traditions that the city experiences. And they take it very seriously and have a lot of fun doing so.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that too, that Siena takes this race very seriously. I mean, they prepare the whole year for those two races. And I compare it like Fastnacht in Basel. They prepare the whole year for this one event, and they give it all, and it's beautiful. So now, I think we talked a lot about this event, and we're at the end of this episode, or almost. And as usual, we're ending an episode with Tips from Tanya. Tips from Tanya.
Okay, well, I've got a few tips to share with everybody regarding Siena and how to have the best day there. And so my first tip for everybody is that I want to highlight how good of a home base Siena makes for touring all of Tuscany. As I mentioned, it's very central in the region. Equidistant with Florence in the north, the Val d'Orcia to the south, Chianti is right there, San Gimignano is just to the west. So it's perfect for exploring the whole region. It has lots of restaurants and shops, so even if you're there for an extended period of time, you have lots to choose from. It has more nightlife than a lot of, smaller towns in Tuscany. So for those who like more of a city environment but don't want to be as north as Florence or in as big of a city as Florence, I think Siena is a second contender. And, a lot of tours in the region depart from Florence, but what I like is that they also have a lot that depart from Siena. So if you don't want to drive, there are a lot of tour companies and operators that have pickups from Siena. So it's a great city. It is large, so it doesn't have sometimes some of the same charm and ease of getting around as some of the smaller cities, but very convenient. So my next tip is to talk about transportation options for getting to and around Siena, and they come with some pros and cons. So I think all of us first intuitively look to trains. And one of the things about Siena is that it's only served by regional trains, which means there are no high-speed connections like you'll find in Florence, Rome, or Milan. And if you're coming from Florence, it's about an hour and a half ride with lots of stops along the way. It's a very scenic, but slow. And if you're coming from other cities like Rome, you usually have to go north to Florence and then turn around and come back to Siena, or you have to go west to Grosseto and change. So trains are a little bit complicated. And even furthermore, the train station itself is outside of the city center, and it's a way uphill walk. Or there are escalators. And if you could imagine, there's like 7 to 10 different escalators, which just show you how tall of a hill Siena is on. So
those are actually fun to take.
If you want to spend 15 minutes doing escalators, yes. But interestingly enough, and I just learned of this most recently, is that while it's easy to default to the train as being the primary mode of transportation or public transportation in Siena, the bus from Florence to Siena is actually faster and more direct. So when I learned that, and it's just like over an hour, and you also get dropped off much closer to the historic center, which is a big plus, especially if you're carrying luggage or trying to make the most of a day trip. So that is a huge bonus in my mind, is faster and in the center of town. Yeah. So look at bus schedules before you're looking at train schedules. And then lastly, of course, is the car. And it offers the most flexibility for exploring the countryside and doing day trips to other towns. But a downside is that you now have to park the car. And it's a walled city with some limited parking. But we have learned a lot of hotels offer like valet services where you can drop off the car and they'll go park it for you. My last tip relates to how to get tickets to the Palio. So we alluded to it earlier that we did not attend because we couldn't get tickets, and more so we couldn't afford tickets this year. But if you're dreaming of seeing the Palio, the first tip is that you need to start planning early and looking for tickets. Though I should mention you can actually watch the race for free from the center of the Piazza del Campo, but it gets really, really crowded and you need to stake out a spot hours ahead of time. Yeah. And once you're in, you can't leave with no restrooms or no re-entry. So be careful what you're drinking and how much you're drinking. And be aware too, there's no shade, there's no seating. And again, it's crowded, but on the plus side, the energy, I can't imagine being any higher than right in the middle of that, arena. So for a more comfortable view, you can buy tickets for either grandstand seats, window spots, or rooftop terraces. So imagine all of those buildings that are surrounding the Campo are not just places to live or work. They are windows to sell for views to the Palio, and they're all arranged privately and they tend to sell out well in advance. So just to give you some perspective, like the grandstand seats will run from 300 to over 600 euros per person, depending on the location. Window seats or balconies can range 400 to 800 plus per person. And if you're getting a prime terrace or rooftop spot, you can pay over 1,000 euros per person, especially if they come with some extras and drinks and parties, etc. So as we learned, it's quite a feat to secure tickets, but also quite expensive. So it wasn't in the cards for us this year, but maybe we can figure out how to make it work someday in the future.
Yeah, we need to make some friends in Siena.
Maybe that's it. Maybe we can get a part of that strategery and trickery and figure out how to make some tickets appear.
Exactly.
But I have to say, experiencing the Palio would be once in a lifetime event. And even just going for the activities during the week and the parade leading up to the race, I mean, that in itself would be amazing. So we'll have to make it a priority next year.
All right.
Okay, so we're at the end of this episode. We hope you've enjoyed our journey into Siena. I mean, the city that means so much to us and one that truly captures the spirit of Tuscany. So whether you visit during the race or any other time of year, Siena has a way of staying with you in its beauty, its history, and its heart. So thanks for joining us for this episode. And if you love Siena too or dream of going one day, we'd love to hear from you.
And as always, keep exploring, keep sharing. If you have questions, you can go on our Facebook page, Experience Italy with Friends. And until next time, okay. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, everyone. Arrivederci. We hope you've enjoyed Experience Italy with Friends. If you like the podcast, remember to follow us and leave a review letting us know what you found to be the most helpful. And if you want expert advice or assistance in creating your own immersive and authentic experience in Italy, visit us at www.amicivacations.com.